You've played against Canada, you've watched Canada. Obviously, despite recent bumps in the road, the Canadian women have a winning record. What drew you in particular to this project?
I think there was three real key factors for me. One was the playing group as it stands and the pathway talent that's coming through. It's incredible. And watching the journey they've been on, especially over the last year and what they've been able to do, I think in difficult circumstances. Having known some of the players, I think number two is the culture of the Canadian players and the people is something that I really aligned to from a values and principles perspective. And number three was it was such an extensive process that we went through. And I'll be honest, I had my doubts at first, but the more time I spent with Kevin and the leadership at the Canadian Association, the senior players that were involved, I wanted to be involved with an organisation that was led with real principles and values. And I felt the more time I spent with Kevin, the more I learned about his values and what he wanted to do with Canada Soccer, the more and more I became very engrossed in the project and the more determined I was that I wanted to be part of it.
Hi, Casey. Congratulations on the appointment. I had a question for Kevin, if that was all right. Kevin, I'm just wondering how serious, if at all, were any Canadian candidates offered or considered for the job, and what do you think it says, if anything, that Canada hasn't had a Canadian women's team coach who was born in Canada since the 1990s? And no disrespect to Casey, she's obviously quite qualified, but maybe you just
We're happy with our head coach that has joined us today. But John, hi John. To answer your question, we started with initial screening of probably 40 to 50 candidates. Included in that group were several Canadians, and several Canadians entered the process, and we emerged with Casey, who's obviously sitting here, and we're happy that she is.
Kevin, Casey, welcome, Coach. Shireen Ahmed, CBC Sports in Toronto. Casey, I wanted to ask you, have you had an opportunity to meet with the players? Have you reached out to any of them? Some you might have known from before, but what has that reception been like to you?
Yeah, obviously it leaked earlier than we would have liked. So we had a call with the players on Saturday morning. I think it's really important the players heard from me as soon as possible. And quite a few have reached out to me personally since. Obviously, I worked very closely with Kaylin Sheridan at my previous role as well, and been really positive. I'm super excited to get to know them as people, to observe them in their environments and help them. I'm here to make sure that we can take this program as high as it possibly can go. Starting today, we're very much focused on doing as well as we possibly can and bringing a trophy back to Canada.
And just a really quick follow-up, you're somebody who's familiar with bumpy roads in different places and federations. What expertise do you bring to a place that is absolutely rebuilding trust with players and with community, like nationally?
I think the fact that I played 18 years internationally really helps me with the players. I understand some of the things they've been through and some of the things they've faced. I've faced them in my own career. I said to the players on Saturday morning, I'm a player's coach, but I have trust in Kevin and the way he's leading this organisation. I know that they've been through a troubled past, but I'm really confident. I wouldn't have took this job if I wasn't confident that it was moving in the right direction. Let's make that very clear. I am very principle based. I think what's right for the players, and I'll always fight for what's right for the players. And I've been really impressed with the direction this organisation is now going in.
Hi, Casey. Congratulations on the job. Now, you spent time here, obviously in 2025 during the World Cup, and I was having a quick look to see what cities you played in. It was quite the tour of Canada that you had, 5 different cities. What did you make of the country, and how much time have you actually spent here?
Well, I've been up there multiple times. I actually had to renew my visa in Vancouver a couple of years ago as well. So I spent quite a few days up there. I have to say the 2015 World Cup was an incredible experience because of the diversity of the cities and how diverse the country is. We travelled, like you said, quite a lot of distance, quite a few different cities, spent a lot of time there, and I absolutely loved it. So I think one of the excitements about this job is being able to immerse myself in the Canadian culture, to learn more, to be part of the Canadian culture. And it's something that really excites me because of the diversity that the country holds.
Just following on from that, obviously that World Cup saw the big focus on the women's game over in England. I was listening to a podcast recently from the comedian Macy Adams, and she hadn't even known that there was a women's national team until that tournament. You've then seen the growth of the women's game over there and the rise of all the clubs. You've been through the ups and downs yourself at Charlton and the early days of that. We've got a new league starting here. Does that excite you to be kind of at the ground level as well, where the domestic game is starting here? And what advice would you give to players coming to the league in its first season here?
Yeah, absolutely. It was another thing that really interested me about the job, was to be able to make a greater impact in Canadian soccer in general and support the league. I saw what the WSL did for the English league, also what it did for the English team. You know, it took them onto new heights of professionalism of the league and what it's been able to grow and do. So to be able to see that firsthand and play in it and be part of it and be part of, when it initially started, I was very much a part of the bidding processes that went on at the club. So I've seen that grow from strength to strength. So to be able to be here now at such an exciting time when the league is starting, you know, I think it's going to be huge for not just the Canadian soccer landscape, but for the Canadian national team itself.
Kevin, in terms of the philanthropic donations, the contributions, who's going to be paying Casey's salary? How does that work? We know on the men's side, the MLS teams are involved in that. What about on the women's side with Casey?
Thanks for the question, Har. The philanthropic contributions that are supporting Casey's appointment in part are coming from private individuals and family foundations. And as Canada Soccer continues to accelerate our focus and emphasis on philanthropy, we anticipate that the source of support for Casey, which is a fund that's specifically dedicated to women in elite coaching, we expect that will grow, and we expect it'll be able to support other women in elite coaching across Canada.
Hi, Casey. Meg Linehan from The Athletic. Just in terms of, I know you've already talked about culture, about feeling comfortable about where this team is, but in terms of, you know, having seen the team up close during the Olympics and having gone through what they went through, where I think their character was called into question a little bit, how do you navigate maybe some of the rehabbing of the image of this team when it's not necessarily even about the players? Do you feel like you're on the hook for that right at the moment?
No, I think one thing people can't question about me is my integrity and my principles. I think I'm able to draw in the line in the sand with this team, with the players. I'm very aware of what they've been through. I will listen and I will hear, but this is an opportunity for us now to move forward. The players, I think, did an incredible job, and the remaining staff that were there during the Olympics, to be able to put on some fantastic performances. And it just shows you the resilience of this group. But now they want to move forward. You know, I don't think you can question their character at all. It's about now what we can do moving forward, how we can improve the team. The team's done fantastic. I'm here to just support, make it better, and make sure that the players are completely focused on what their job is, which is to win football matches.
Hello, Casey.
Hi.
Kevin. Welcome, Casey. I want to sort of like go straight to business. 2027. Canada, it's a big moment for the World Cup in 2027. So have you maybe talked about objectives, or what's the end goal? Any talent to watch development?
Yeah, I think when we spoke on Saturday, from now onwards, everything is focused in on the World Cup. At first, it's about qualification, then it's about making sure that we can do well within that World Cup. And I think it's about how do we go from 6 to 1? You know, how do we get ourselves on a podium finish? And that's not easy, because there's 10 top teams in the world that want to do it. You know, we're going to be one of those teams that wants to do it. And it's about how we can play progressive football, how we can get the best players out in the field available, and how we can introduce younger players during this time where we've got a little bit of time, because there's some real exceptional talent coming through the pathway. It's about integrating those players into the system too, so that when we get to 2027, we're ready to compete.
This could be for either of you, wondering if any decisions have been made regarding support staff, and specifically if Andy Spence will still be part of the staff going forward.
Yeah, I spoke to Andy in person yesterday, and I've been very clear that I'm not making any immediate decisions. I want to make sure that I go into the environment, I learn, I listen, I observe, I see what's needed for the team, and then decisions will be made from there.
The cycle now is leading towards the Women's World Cup in Brazil 27, then the LA Olympics after that. The great evolution in the women's game in terms of how many different parts of the world are really emerging and growing. I was kind of wondering, based on your own firsthand experience, where that trend is leading, and for example, when thinking about that next Women's World Cup, where that sort of competition is going to come from, that you're going to have to face up against, like South America, maybe Central and Eastern Europe, in terms of what could be rising, and what is your thought process in terms of that global evolution, and does that make it that much more challenging to compete for trophies at this point?
I think where the women's game's going with the amount of competition, with, like you say, with the exponential growth over the last 8 to 10 years, with the professionalization of the game, of course, that's made it way more competitive, but that's what we want. You know, that's what we want for the women's game. We want it to be at the very highest level. Yes, does it make it more difficult to win trophies? Yeah, but it just means that our preparation has to be key. You know, we've got 2 years to build into that now. We've got to make sure the squad's right. We've got to make sure that we're bringing young players in, that we play the right opposition, that we're prepped and ready to go. And I think learning more about the players, learning more about the staff is going to be key in the immediate phase for me. And then, you know, embedding our style of play and working through the ways of winning. You know, it's about winning. It's about creating a legacy. And I've seen from the Lionesses what it's been able to do for the game in England through winning, and that's what we want to do here in Canada.
Obviously, you've been part of projects before, newfound projects like with Manchester United Women and the San Diego Wave, and that bore its own challenges. But you're coming into a bit of a different situation here on the international level and with a Canadian side that has had a bit of a tumultuous time as of yet. What kind of lessons did you learn in those initial stints that you can sort of bring here to kind of help stabilize the ship and kind of bring them back to the glory that we saw back in 2021?
I think every experience you have as a head coach, you learn something. You know, I have been known for building, and this is a rebuilding phase, really, in terms of building trust. But I learned a lot from my experience coming into the NWSL. I worked with a group of players that did not trust coaches. So I had to spend 3 or 4 months earning trust and making sure that we built relationships in an environment where they felt safe. That's no different here. You know, I think that's going to be very similar to building the trust of the players, making sure that they, if you stand in front of a room and you say you're going to do something, doing it, you know, and living accountable to that, and making sure that I listen to them, that they have a voice in the environment. It's their environment, and I'm here to support how we create that environment for them. It's going to be a high performance environment. We want to talk about winning. We want to produce winners. They've done it before in an Olympics. How do we recreate it at the world stage now? And that's what we're going to be focusing on. And it's an opportunity to move forward. You know, we can't keep looking back all the time at the past. That we can't change what's happened. All we can do is change the future.
Thank you. And then a follow-up for Kevin. Kevin, obviously the other appointment that you made earlier last year, and Jesse Marsh has been a hit. Does that kind of set maybe a bit of a standard and precedent now for Casey in terms of another appointment under your guidance, in terms of hopefully the impact that she has on the women's team as Jesse had on the men's team?
Yeah, we believe strongly in the impact that Casey's going to make. I think the two situations are distinct, but it's our duty as a federation to make sure that we're supporting both of our programs in as strong and equitable manner, and that's what we intend to do to help Casey and the women's national team be very, very successful.
Hi, thanks. Simon Haupt, the Globe and Mail. Mr. Blue, the drone scandal last summer and fall exposed a lack of oversight by Canada's soccer leadership. What did you say to Ms. Stoney to convince her that she would be, on the one hand, empowered enough to run the program as she sees fit, but would still be subject to the sort of oversight that was clearly missing when Ms. Priestman headed the program?
Yeah, throughout the recruiting process, Simon, we had very direct conversations about the type of culture and the cultural expectations and the cultural norms, frankly, that we're moving to. And, you know, the only way that these types of relationships can come together and you know, Casey can make a decision to join us and we can make a decision to join up with her is for there to be clear and direct communication about all the difficult issues. And so I think that we of course covered that ground in a lot of the recruiting process.
And Ms. Stoney, what did Mr. Blue say to you to assure you that you would be free to run the program as you see fit?
I think what Kevin said to me from the start is that I will be supported to ensure the success of the team. You know, he's not here to tell me how to do my job. He's here to support me to do my job and the staff around me, and therefore the players. I spoke to the players in depth about Kevin too. I did my own research. I didn't take this job without knowledge, and they spoke very highly of the difference that he's been able to make in the short time that he's come in. I felt like our values were aligned, and I think that was a huge part of me coming into this. I wanted to work for leadership with good values that were going to look after the players and make good decisions for the organisation. And I'm confident going into this process that that's going to happen.
Casey, congratulations on the job. You mentioned earlier the players. You're excited about what you see in the program now, what's coming through. I'm curious, what kind of vision do you see this team? You know, over the last few years, a lot of the best results have maybe come from a defense-first approach, and there's been a push to get more goals. Do you see yourself sticking with that defense-first approach? How do you see things balancing out?
Yeah, I think one thing I was clear of when I was going through this process is we want to create more goal scoring opportunities. This team can defend, they're hard to beat. It's how we build on the in possession. How do we be more progressive with the ball? How can we create more goal scoring opportunities? How can we create a freedom within a framework for the players that have got creativity? And how can we get the ball forward into attacking areas? And bypass it, but I'm not talking about playing direct. I'm talking about how do we bypass lines so that we can get our attacking players on the ball in the early phases as quick as possible. Because, you know, I think I'm not a possession for possession's sake coach. It's about how we can hurt the opponent. What spaces are they giving us? How can we exploit them? And how can we make sure that we are creating and scoring? Because that's why people pay to come and watch you play. We want to entertain. Yes, we want to keep clean sheets. But we want to entertain, and we want to make sure that people fall in love with this team. And we have a very clear identity and that we can play exciting football.
Hi guys, Bruce Arthur from the Toronto Star. Congratulations to Casey and to Kevin. In terms of those difficult issues and what would I presume be extensive conversations on both sides, because both of you are trying to establish a relationship here. Kevin, how would you describe kind of the challenges and those difficult issues, not necessarily in the past, but looking forward into the future? I know you and Jesse have worked really hard in terms of fundraising and things like that, right? And for Casey, kind of what do you see as the bigger challenges with this team, not just on the pitch, but going forward, the things that you have to not necessarily repair, but address?
Okay. I'm honestly excited. Obviously, I think they've been through a tough time. Like I said before, building trust, making sure that I've got the right people around me in terms of support staff, making sure that the players are put in a position to be successful. I'm aware of the challenges of the past. Like, I'm really confident, having spoken to Kevin, having spoken to Jesse, that equity is a key priority for the Canadian organisation too, and that we're going to get supported to be successful. So there's every place you're going to go to, club or country, is going to have its unique challenges. But for me, this is just a really exciting opportunity to impact the game and to make sure that we can take the team forward.
Bruce, I don't have a whole lot to add other than to say that as a federation, you know, as earnestly as we are trying to move forward, we are also being humble about learning from the past so as not to repeat the same mistakes again. And I'm not talking specifically about flying drones. I'm talking about some of the underlying structural issues that may have precipitated things that have caused difficulty broadly in the federation as you know, over time. And this sort of humble approach about understanding what happened, learning from it, and then continuing a agenda of change and reform is something that the federation is committed to, and hopefully bringing in people, obviously like Casey, who's a world-class coach with strong values and character, is an example of what we're trying to do.
With regards to sort of the composition of this team over the last few months, we've seen obviously a very transitional period following Bev's departure. With regards to the Pinatar Cup in February, and obviously opponents currently unknown, just curious on what you see really the personnel, the future of this team being, whether that's, you know, specifically calling out, say, a Marie Aladou, who's had some great opportunities under Andy Spence, and yeah, just, you know, sort of towards that spectrum of you know, looking towards the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've always got to have one eye on the future. So for me, it's about looking the program as a whole. What have we got coming through the pathway? What have we got currently in the team? Where are the gaps that we're missing? How can we improve? Talking with the medical staff on availability for February is going to be important. Obviously, we've got some players playing in Europe. So what's that going to look like as well? So I will heavily lean on as well now. I'll heavily lean on Andy and his staff as well around they've got really good insight into the players. So obviously, I've got good insight too, but they know them best having worked with them, and also the medical staff and the physical performance staff. Where are people at? With an eye on the future, because you've got 2 years to get caps into players, to make sure people have got more experience whilst keeping the heartbeat of the team, in terms of the players that have got vital experience at World Cup level, vital experience in terms of the environment and the culture that, has been created. And everything I hear about the culture of the players is fantastic. So I want to just enhance that and keep that and make sure that it flourishes. So for me, it's I can't give you an exact answer right now. It's about looking at a whole and how do we make sure that we go to 2027 as experienced as we can, but make sure that we've got the right people on the bus to bring us success.
Hi, Andy Petrillo with One Soccer. To some extent, my questions have been answered, but it took me forever to figure out how to raise my hand, and I don't know how to put it back down. So, hello, welcome aboard, Casey, and hello, Kevin. I do have 2 questions. I guess one for Kevin is going back to just the process of hiring, and I know Casey spoke to the values of what were important to her, but what was important to you, and what stood out about her that made you want to hire her and stand out against all the other candidates? And I guess the other question then, Casey, is looking ahead to the schedule this year with the team in particular. There aren't really any tournaments that are worthy of winning trophies. So when you do have these windows, what in particular are you trying to do with the team?
Okay. I think that the fact there is no major tournament this year is a blessing. I think it gives us time. It gives us time to grow together, to learn together, to experiment, to bring in new players, and also to embed the philosophy and the style that we want to play. Players don't necessarily always like change, so it's given us time to do that gradually and make sure that they're comfortable with the ideas, understand the tactical parts that we're going to put into them from time to time, and also an opportunity to bring different players into camps so that I can have eyes on everybody. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to explore whilst trying to make sure that we're putting performances, win games, build confidence, and build trust.
Andy, I'll answer your question with a quick story, which is that I was in Portland watching Sink play her last game in Portland, and I had to leave before the end of the game because I had to catch a flight down to San Diego to learn more about CASEY Stoney. And obviously Casey was on our radar. In my position, it's responsible to understand the landscape, especially when you have transition of this kind. And the thing that I wanted to most understand about Casey when we first met was her character and the strength of her values and her integrity. Somebody's coaching ability and their skills in terms of what's appropriate for our team. That the football experts have advised me on that, and also obviously Casey's record speaks for itself. But my main interest at the beginning was to understand the person and understand her values and what makes her tick. I think that we have an excellent fit in somebody with an extremely strong character that will be a great leader for Canadian soccer as we go forward.